You guys should be here if you have recently reached a standstill with your rankings on Google and are really at a loss of what to do next. You should also be here if you find yourself getting rejected by the influencers that you reach out to with little or no change. And you should be here if you've heard about the benefits of using visual content in your marketing and you want to just learn how to integrate that content into your own strategy. And lastly, you should be here if you want to successfully accomplish the above without breaking the bank. So I just want to take a quick poll. Who here currently uses visual content as part of their content strategy, and what kind of images do you use? So do you use stock photos, use infographics, do you use both, do you use none? If you guys want to just type it into the side there. All right, so typically the responses that I get from this are most people use a lot of stock photos or they use a little bit of both. So that's a good start. But the question is, like, why should you use visual content? And I get it. What's the big deal? It's really time consuming to create really good content. And how can you really guarantee that that visual content is going to be seen? And how can you guarantee that it's going to be valuable and worth your time? So there are a lot of questions. And the fact is that nearly 75% of marketers surveyed in 2015 have said that visual content actually performed 2 to 5 times better than text-based content. And this is according to a survey that Sproutworth did last year. So why is this the case? Because visual content is about 60,000 times easier for your brain to interpret than text-based content. And on top of that, marketers believe that original graphics and illustrations, which include infographics, are actually 20% more effective than stock images. So that's a pretty substantial percentage. So why am I telling you all of this? Why is it necessary, and what does it mean for you? Well, if original graphics or infographics are more than 20% more effective than stock images, does that not create a greater need for original graphics? And this need for original visual content is the perfect opportunity for you to build relationships with influencers, and as a result, boost backlinks, which will in turn drive up your SEO rankings and eventually lead to an increase in organic traffic. And for that, for you, that means an increase in revenue as well if you can convert that traffic. So the way you can build those connections and backlinks, as I mentioned, are with infographics. And by creating original infographics for influencers specifically, there's a massive potential for higher rankings and these better relationships. So the way you can do this, I'm actually going to break down the process that myself and the team at Venngage used for boosting our own rankings, traffic, and revenue by over 400%. And we did this in just less than a year. So I'm going to break it down in 4 really easy steps. Before I move on, I do want to be completely transparent that anyone who's participating in this session should know what I'm going to be sharing with you is not a quick fix solution. So I'm not going to give you a magic formula or a silver bullet that will suddenly change your life. But what I will do is share my exact process with you. And if you follow these steps closely and practice this method consistently over time, you should see really valuable results. But it will not happen overnight. So for us, it took, like I said, just under a year. It might take just as long for you, might take a bit less time, but it really comes down to how much work you're really willing to put into it. And that being said, this process works. So Venngage managed to triple its revenue, boost signups and traffic by 400% by following these 4 steps. And I want to make sure each one of you actually can achieve that same thing. So we're going to move on to the first step. And this is researching influencers and top content. So before you even start creating any infographics, you need to make sure that you find relevant influencers in your niche, and you can make those infographics for those influencers. So you also need to research content by those influencers that you can reference during your pitch. So how do you find these appropriate influencers? I'm going to highlight 2 main tools that I use for influencer and content outreach. So the tools I use, as you all know, are probably Moz's Fresh Web Explorer and BuzzSumo's most shared content tool. So they're both great in their own way. You don't need both of them. One is usually enough, but I'll go through each one so you can decide which one suits your preferences. When it comes to search engine optimization, Moz is definitely a recommended tool. What I want to focus on today, however, is one specific aspect of Moz that will help you research fresh content that is relevant to your business. I'm sure a lot of you guys have already used this. The first thing you need to know about Building up a good contact list is how to use a fresh web explorer, and this can be found when you sign into Moz Pro. And what this tool does is it scours the web for the latest content pertaining to a certain keyword. We were trying to rank on a number of different keywords, including terms like infographic, infographic maker, infographic template, and a handful of other relevant terms. We tried searching for those keywords using the Fresh Web Explorer, but we quickly realized that in this list of results, we kept seeing competitor mentions. So the last thing we wanted to do was reach out to our own competitors, asking them for a favor. So we changed our direction up a bit, and we asked ourselves 3 important questions. And those 3 questions were, what kind of people blog a lot, which sites have high domain authorities, and which of those people and sites would want to publish an infographic. So the answers we came up with were content marketers, lifestyle bloggers, education bloggers, and people in PR. So these are the people who are most likely to give you a backlink when asked. Why? Because as marketers, you probably understand the need for links. Lifestyle and education bloggers are typically freelance writers as well, at least the ones that I've come in contact with, and many of whom have no issue giving you a link in exchange for a service or for something that's beneficial to them. And most marketers and PR individuals also have access to sites with relatively high domain authorities because a lot of them guest blog at major publications as well. And then education sites or universities in particular have some high domain authorities, not only because teachers and educators are constantly referencing them, but because there's just a lot of content constantly being published and a lot of students coming in as visitors. And of course, freelance writers contribute to a variety of different sites, some of which include publications like Huffington Post, Forbes, Entrepreneur, Mashable, and the list goes on and on. So we searched for content that fell into those categories. And some of the keywords we plugged into Moz were pretty generic phrases like social media marketing tips, content marketing blog, how to rank on SEO, tools for educators, blogging tips, basically terms that fit into all of those different categories. So anything we thought people in the previously mentioned groups would write about. And as you can see in this image, we entered a term and chose the time bracket we wanted to see results for. So since Moz looks at the entire web, we only looked at results from the past week and we exported that list. Then we went on to BuzzSumo, and unlike Moz, BuzzSumo does not have as far of search reach, so you can usually get more refined results, and we use the content research tool. So we typed in similar search terms, exported that list as well, and the content research tool shows you results based on social interactions. The articles with the most social interactions appear in that order, so you can actually choose to look at content from the past, or you can choose to look at content from the past year. Again, you don't get as many results as Moz, but you do get a quality list of articles that did well on social media. Okay, so now we move on to the fun part, and this is organizing your list. So once you've exported your list, whether it's from Moz or BuzzSumo or both, you need to organize that list and filter out all the junk, I guess. And that means anything with a low domain authority, any site that only has no follow links. And these are sites like forums, Reddit, Pinterest, etc. So you want to import your list into a Google spreadsheet or into an Excel document, and then delete all of the columns except for the one that says blog title and URL. And if there isn't already a column, add one for the first name, last name, and email address of that contact. So this is the tricky part, and for most of you that do outreach, you know that it requires a lot of work, and a lot of you are probably going to roll your eyes at me, but that's okay because I can't see you anyway. So what you can do now is go through each URL and find out who the author of that article was and what their email is. So this is why you really want to filter out the junk beforehand so you don't waste your time finding information for sites that might be useless to you. And that way you can populate your list with the relevant contact information. So if your list is under 100 people, then manually populating your list is definitely doable, but anything more than that is going to be very time consuming for you. So simple data entry work like this is something you can hire a virtual assistant for. I recommend using Upwork to find someone remote. And if you decide to do the work manually, Reportive, as many of you probably know, is a Chrome extension that syncs with your Gmail account, and you can validate whether an email you enter is correct since it pulls up the individual's LinkedIn profile for reference. So when you get the right email, it kind of looks like this. And there's actually another tool I haven't included in here, but hunter.io is one that's really good. There's a major limit on the freemium version of the tool, and it restricts you to only 150 requests a day, which is actually quite a few for a freemium version. But you need to upgrade to a paid plan to get access to more emails. But for the most part, it's pretty accurate. So hunter.io, I would recommend checking that tool out. And if you don't already have enough work set out for you, one thing you can do as an extra step is to find the person's top performing content on their blog. So BuzzSumo lets you do this by searching a domain and listing the content based on the number of shares. So by tracking the influencer's best content, you can, one, further reinforce the benefits of adding an infographic to that article and giving it another round of promotion. And two, the benefit you gain is exposure on an article that is already performing really well, and that extra SEO juice. So if that article already ranks on the first page of Google for a certain keyword, a link to your site in that same article with visual content can be extremely beneficial. So once you have your list ready, you can start preparing for your pitch. Now, your pitch is what will determine whether or not an influencer decides to work with you. So you need to make sure it's a great pitch. Your pitch should be made up of 5 components: the subject, the opener, the presentation, the ask, and the sign-off, and each component is important to include. And if you're thinking that why do you need so much presentation or so much preparation for your email that you send out, it's super crucial. I know this because I send so many emails all the time. I'm really used to facing rejection. And these are just the tactics that I've noticed work best. So your subject line is what we're going to start with, and this is how someone decides whether or not to open your email. So if you have a shitty subject line, no one's going to open your email and no one's going to reply to your email. So MailChimp actually did a study that looked at different subject lines in an email and analyzed how certain phrases performed better than others. And what they learned was that the subject lines, which were direct to the point, not too salesy, those are the ones that performed best. So in other words, try to refrain from cheesy subject lines. Well, like I think I got this one last week, was this will be the best email you read all day. Because what if it isn't the best email they read all day? Then you'll be a liar and people will ignore any other emails that come from you. So the next part is the opener, and the opener is the introduction line of your email. So if the subject line is your Tinder profile, think of the opener as a first date. I don't know how many of you guys are on Tinder, but the subject line or your opener is really important. So just like a first date, you want to appear genuine. You want to start with a friendly greeting. Don't be afraid to show some of your personality in this first sentence. And then the next part is the presentation. As you may have guessed, the presentation is the meat of your pitch. So this is a part where you really present the reason for emailing a person. So whether you want them to share an article for you or give you a link, you need to present it in a way that's appealing to them. And this is why it's important to offer the influencer something. In our case, we offered to make them an infographic, which was a proposal that was very difficult for many people to refuse. Like, who doesn't want a free infographic? Most agencies will charge anywhere between $1,500 to $5,000 for one infographic. So a free one is a pretty obvious steal. And a lot of the influencers we reached out to really saw this. So find a way to offer this person something irresistible, but don't ask them for anything in return just yet. First, reel them in, make sure they're hanging on to your every word. And then the next part is the ask. And now that you've offered them something, you can ask the influencer for a favor once they've taken you up on your initial offer. And you can choose to send the ask in a follow-up email after you're sure that they want your infographic, but that's not entirely necessary. You can keep it within the same email. But the point is to just keep it simple and once again, make it seem like your request is tiny compared to what you're giving them in exchange. So we asked them if they would be willing to include the infographic we made for them in the original blog post with a simple attribution link back to us. And finally, the sign-off is how you end your email. So with this, try not to be overly pushy. Don't use words like, I expect to hear back from you, which happens more frequently than you might think. Instead, express to the influencer your excitement to collaborate with them. Not only is it not pushy, but it can act as a subtle ego boost to the person who you're reaching out to. And then after you've emailed everyone on your list, you can make an infographic. So there are actually 2 steps to this process. The first is requesting an outline, and the second part is actually designing the infographic. So if you're freaking out and worried that you have no design skills, don't worry, we're going to address that issue. I actually had no design skills when I first started this process. I'm not going to say I'm a master designer right now, but I definitely improved a lot, and the infographics actually get published. So we'll get to that in a bit. Now, like I said, the first step is to ask the influencer to send you an outline of the exact content that you want to see in the infographic. There are a couple of reasons for this. The first, they already know that the content in the blog post very well because they wrote it, so it will take far less time for them to just send you a quick outline of the article. And they will also know better what material the infographic can do without and what information is crucial to keep in. So second, it saves you time. And in the past, I've noticed that even though the influencer asks me to prepare the outline for them, they always have plenty of last-minute suggestions and changes they want to make. And there's a lot of emailing back and forth, and it's a serious waste of time. And getting them to prepare the outline actually ensures that they're happy with the content being included. So the question that is probably on your mind right now is how to even begin to create this infographic. So assuming you're not an expert designer yourself who's highly skilled in the art of Photoshop or Illustrator, you might need to seek out other alternatives. And in this case, you can choose to use an online tool or contract a designer. Now, if you use a tool, you can look to spend anywhere between $15 to $50 a month, and it would take you about 2 to 5 hours probably to create a relatively good infographic. Naturally, I recommend Venngage, but I am biased. But you can also choose to hire a designer. So if you hire an in-house designer, an entry-level designer will usually cost you between $30,000 to $40,000 US a year, and that number will just keep going up the more experience they have. Now, typically designers take at least a full day to get back to you, and some will take up to a week to get something done, others will take longer. But a designer also gives you one more person to communicate back and forth with. So if you're looking for some cheaper alternatives, you can check Upwork, or you can also find someone that you can contract who fits your budget. And you can search for somebody who uses an infographic tool. So for instance, on Upwork, if you search Venngage within the freelance section, you might find somebody that already knows how to use that tool. So in less than a year, like I said, we went from not even ranking on the first page of Google to ranking in the first place for our top 5 converting keywords. And currently, I think we rank for over 200 different high volume words, as well as a bunch of long tail keywords. Luckily for you, we recently launched a business plan. And this is the Venngage for Business Plan. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just going to quickly run through some features of the plan. It lets you add people to your marketing team, so that will make it easier to collaborate on infographics if you guys have a big SEO or a big link building team. You can also create custom brand colors, logos, fonts, and manage and share your team templates. So there's also a folders portion that lets you organize everything you do as well. And it allows you to share these infographics privately between influencers or just between your teammates. You can also choose from hundreds of already created templates, so you don't actually have to go out of your way to create something from scratch every time. That can make your life a lot easier. Like I said, I've made an infographic in maybe like 20, 30 minutes in the past. If you are interested in learning more about some more advanced aspects of infographic design and just how to visualize data in a compelling way that increases your conversions, the CEO of Venngage, he actually offers this free infographic masterclass. So you guys can actually get hands-on advice on how to create these visuals better, whereas I'm just mostly touching on link building strategies. But naturally, mastering the art of infographics doesn't happen overnight. This masterclass does make it a lot easier to fully grasp the basics so that you can just get better at making lots of great infographics in much less time. And like I said, it's completely free because I understand time and money is very valuable and you do want to make the most of it. And of course, the more influencers you reach out to and create infographics for, the more backlinks you get. And with more backlinks to a specific term, you all know, the higher you'll rank on SEO for that term. Of course, there are other elements that have a say on how you rank on SEO, but backlinks are always great. So when you rank higher in Google, you all know you'll drive more organic traffic back to your site, specifically people who are searching for that term. And more traffic typically means more signups, more upgrades, and in the end, more money in your pocket. And I want to make sure that at the end of the day, you're getting more money in your pocket, and that's it. So the last step is the the promotion step. And just because you've created an infographic for one specific influencer doesn't mean that you can promote it to other influencers. Like I said, you put your time into creating that infographic, so you might as well make the most of it, right? It will take you tons of time if you're just creating one infographic for each influencer. So your goal should be to create specific infographics for different influencers and then try to find many more influencers to pitch those existing infographics to. So what can you do? Like I said, you can repurpose that infographic and pitch it. This includes guest blogging. So you can republish one infographic 100 times as long as the copyright is a little bit different. A lot of sites require you to just write about 400 to 800 original words if you want to post something. You can also ask other influencers or bloggers who write about similar subjects to include the infographic in their posts. If you use Ahrefs, that's a really good tool for finding people who've linked back to specific content already. So find people that have maybe linked or included an infographic in previous posts, and then just include that as well. Just give me 1 second. So let's say, hypothetically, you create an infographic about the 10 do's and don'ts of SEO, right? You can search for that title on Google as well, and find someone who's written something along the same lines. Follow the initial list building process that I mentioned before and reach out to them and ask them if they'd be interested in posting your infographic. Chances are they're going to say yes because it's an infographic that's already relevant to them. So instead of sending them the image attachment, this is an added tip, is send them the embed code. Not only does it speed up the process for them when they want to publish the infographic, but it actually lets you include your link back to your site as the creator of the infographic underneath that post. So that's 2 birds, 1 stone. And if after all this you're still skeptical about using infographics, don't worry. They aren't the only tools that lead to higher rankings and better relationships. You might be great at making videos. I've seen plenty of people that have created videos for influencers and gotten either used it as an affiliate program or for SEO purposes. You can also create slide shares, ebooks, charts. We have a free tool called Beam, and it just lets you quickly plug in some data and print out a chart. So that's also really useful. But the point is, you want to figure out where your talent lies and what skills or services you can offer to someone else. So if you do decide to take to give infographics a shot, I created a little quick 30% off coupon for anyone who's listening. So that will just bring the regular price from $49 a month for our business plan down to $35 a month. So you guys are totally welcome to use this. I think the coupon is valid until this weekend. So ask around your friends or ask your boss if it's worth it and go for it. Like I said, less than a year, we tripled our revenue. And like, if you're making $500,000 right now, next year you could be making 1.5 million. So it seems like a worthwhile investment when you look at it in the long run. So code's only valid for the business plan. If you just go to Venngage, this is what you'll see. You can actually get up to 50% off with that. So the code is actually going to take you down to $27 a month if you go with the annual plan. And it's DIGOLY 30. So just take a screenshot of that, or you can email me and I can send it to you later. But yeah, that's just if you want to take it to the next level and actually you do plan on using infographics. So to end off, I just want to finish by saying that it might seem a bit cheesy, but I really believe it. Don't put in half the work unless you're okay with half the results. And if you really want to achieve the best results, you can't only do some of the work. You'll need to invest the time, the effort. You want to create a dent in your rankings. And if you want to connect with more influencers that will help you make the right dents, you really need to just put in more of that effort in. Like I said, this process has worked in the past, it continues to work for us. And on that note, I guess we'll pass it back over to you, Kate.